The sea was a cruel mistress, but no more cruel than the world that birthed her children of storm and steel, the pirates. Among them, a few defied every expectation society had written for women. They weren't delicate flowers or whispered secrets behind lace curtains. They were hurricanes with hearts of fire, and when the law finally caught them, the world expected their stories to end. But what happened to these female pirates after capture was beyond anything anyone imagined. It was 1720 when Anne Bonny and Mary Red stood in the stinking dockyard of Port Royal, Jamaica, two women whose names had turned ships to shadows. The courtroom was packed, not because justice was to be served, but because curiosity had gathered like vultures. People wanted to see if the rumors were true. Were they really women? Were they really pirates? The judge stared down from his chair, sweat beading his powdered wig. "You are accused," he said, "of piracy upon the high seas. What say you?" Anne Bonny smirked, her red hair a wild mess of defiance. Mary stood silent, her eyes cold and calm, the eyes of someone who'd already stared into death's face and didn't blink. The gallows waited for them, as it had for 100 men before, but this time the noose trembled. The world had no mercy for women who stepped beyond their place. To be a pirate was bad enough. To be a woman pirate was unforgivable. For Anne and Mary, capture wasn't just the end of freedom. It was a punishment for daring to be what society said they couldn't. But what came next would shock everyone who thought they knew how justice worked. After the verdict was read, guilty of piracy and sentenced to hang, both women stunned the court with the same plea. They were with child. The courtroom erupted in chaos. By the law of England, a woman quick with child could not be executed until she gave birth. The judge, flustered and red-faced, slammed his gavel. "Execution postponed," he barked. The pirates had found a temporary reprieve, life clinging to life. While the male pirates, Calico Jack, Anne's lover among them, swung from ropes the next morning, Anne and Mary were dragged to prison cells reeking of salt and blood. There the legends began to fade into whispers, but history never recorded silence correctly. Behind those iron bars, Anne Bonny did not weep. She waited. She plotted. And somewhere deep in her heart she burned with the same rage that made her pick up a sword in the first place. "If you'd fought like a man," she had told Jack before his execution, "you wouldn't have to die like a dog." Mary's fate came sooner. Ill and broken from fever, she gave birth to a stillborn child. Days later, she died in the same cold cell, her name carved in the dirt by her trembling hand. But Anne vanished. There are records that she was released, perhaps thanks to her wealthy father. Some say she lived quietly in the Carolinas, raising children and never speaking of the sea again. Others say she escaped, took a new name, and returned to the Caribbean to live as a merchant by day and a ghost by night. But what if her story didn't end there? What if, instead of dying in silence, she became the legend that frightened men whispered about every time a woman stepped aboard a ship? Anne Bonny wasn't alone in her defiance. Years later, more women followed her path. Pirate queens like Qing Shi in China, who commanded more than 300 ships and tens of thousands of men. When the Chinese emperor's fleet came for her, she didn't die. She negotiated. She retired. She became one of the few pirates in history to walk away rich, powerful, and free. Her punishment was not death but legend, and perhaps that was the cruelest thing for the empire that tried to bury her. But not all were so lucky. In England, captured female pirates were often treated as property. Some were sold into slavery, others imprisoned for life, yet even then they defied expectations. Some escaped by seducing guards, others disguised themselves as men and fled to new lands. There were whispers of a sisterhood of the sea, a hidden network of women who had once been pirates, smugglers, and sailors. They helped each other survive, teaching one another to read, to fight, to live free even in chains. One British officer wrote in his diary in 1731, "They hang the men with swiftness, but the women, they confuse them. They smile at the rope, whisper secrets, and stare into your soul as if they know you'll die before they do." That officer later vanished at sea. His ship found adrift, no crew aboard, only a single red ribbon tied to the mast. You see, the punishment for women pirates wasn't always death. It was transformation. Society could cage them, whip them, brand them, but it could never erase their defiance. They lived on in the stories that terrified sailors and thrilled dreamers. Mothers told their daughters about Anne Bonny not as a warning, but as a whisper of what freedom could look like. "The sea doesn't care if you're a man or woman," one sailor once said, "only if you're brave enough to face her." And maybe that's what made these women unforgettable. After capture, after humiliation, after everything was stripped away, they refused to be small. Even in their final moments, they left a mark deeper than cannon fire. Some wrote letters before their executions, messages that spoke not of regret but of rebellion. "We lived as men fear to live," one wrote, "and we die as no man dares to die." The truth is, the fate of female pirates after capture is a reflection of every woman who ever defied the rules of her time. Some were crushed by it, others carved their names into history with it, but all of them became symbols of unbroken spirit. Their punishment turned into power. Their pain became prophecy. The seas still whisper their names when the wind turns violent. Anne, Mary Ching-she, a reminder that freedom has a price, but so does obedience. So the next time someone tells you that pirates were just men with swords and scars, remember this: some of the fiercest hearts ever to sail didn't wear boots or grow beards. They wore courage. They wore fury. And when the world tried to cage them, they taught it something it would never forget: that freedom isn't granted. It's taken. If this story moved you, if the spirit of Anne Bonny and Mary Red still burns in your veins, don't just watch history, be part of keeping it alive. Subscribe to this channel for more untold stories of courage, rebellion, and the forgotten voices that changed the world. Because legends never die, they just wait to be heard again.